CNN News.
I came across this story a couple of weeks ago. Not to say I didn't think anything of it, but I know Savvy had done a segment on this. I know Nico via Hotspot had mentioned this as well. So I'm going to talk about this, but I'm going to do it slightly differently compared to how Nico and Savvy featured it on their channels a little bit, because I do have some extra things I want to say about this. But Collin, what do you mean that Zionists are getting reparations? What do you mean by that?
I thought we don't do those. I thought no one gets those.
No, we don't do those for Black people. Oh, that's the issue.
Oh, got it.
We don't do that for Black people.
That makes sense.
But for white people who get caught in their fifis regarding their claims of anti-Semitism, they do. But not the people who essentially built this country from the ground up. But let's get into it. Shall we? Wait, why is it not?
You got it. There it goes. It just sometimes takes a second. It's weird.
Second. Yeah, there.
Weird.
So once again, give a shout out to Robert Inlakesh, who does great reporting. We love him here.
Don't say his name too loud on YouTube. You might get your entire channel pulled, apparently.
Yeah, we should talk. Yeah, we should talk about that because he's been censored hard.
He put up. So his channel had like 0 videos, and they still pulled it. I don't know how that works. Literally just his name, and then he lost his Google account as well. So weird.
So all the same, you know, we love him here, and we're more the reason for us to continue featuring his work, especially since he's been censored heavily on social media and on YouTube. So he wrote this for the Palestine Chronicle, where he writes, Columbia University didn't pay reparations for slavery. Now it pays them to Zionists. Part of the strategy is framing anti-Israel sentiments as anti-Semitism and tying sympathy for Gaza to support of Hamas. So Robert continues, despite its historic ties to slavery, Columbia University has not paid reparations to Black Americans. But now it has reached a compensation deal for its Jewish staff over claims of anti-Semitism. Many feel this represents a blatant prioritization of some groups over others by the academic institution. Gee, you think?
Yep.
Anyway, bowing to the pressure of the U.S. Trump administration, Columbia University not only agreed to pay $200 million to settle a federal investigation into alleged anti-Semitism, but also reached a historic settlement with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to pay into a $21 million class claims fund to provide reparations to Jewish employees impacted by alleged anti-Semitism. So in other words, Jewish staff.
221 million, if we want to just add those together, you know.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So this is going to Jewish staff, just to keep it clear. Jewish staff who work at Columbia.
Almost a $250 million.
Right. On April 17, 2024, anti-war student protesters set up their first encampment at Columbia University in order to pressure the academic institution to divest from Israel. The reaction from the university was to call in law enforcement, including riot police, to violently expel them from their peaceful activism and lawfully exercising free speech. The violent crackdown triggered a wave of encampments by students at Ivy League colleges across the country, before escalating across the entire North American continent and resulting in an uptick in student activism across Europe. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu compared the student protests to Nazis, which was followed by U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, labeling them all anti-Semitic and accusing them of being terrorist sympathizers. Media outlets from CNN to Fox News provided wall-to-wall coverage of alleged anti-Semitism on college campuses, even reporting on various hoaxes that were invented by Zionist activists, like claims from a woman that she was stabbed in the eye with a flagpole, amongst others.
Yeah, which
almost all the violent assaults and racial abuse came from the Zionist activists against the student protesters. Also, one of the two most prominent groups involved in organizing the encampments nationwide was Jewish Voice for Peace. Anti-Zionist Jews were present at almost at every encampment, some experiencing assault at the hands of local police forces sent in to crack down on the anti-war advocates. So keep in mind, all of this was happening under who? Reef. Because
Biden?
I think some people have forgotten this already.
Joseph Biden?
Exactly. So it's not like Trump got in and now things have escalated, but this has been a thing since late 2023 into last year when Biden was very much president. So, but some influences want you to forget all of that or ignore that fact and are now basically saying like, oh, see what's happening to Gaza now. If you voted for Kamala, this wouldn't be happening. Where, as we've reported, was no indication that Kamala was going to stop anything regarding what's happening. She might have given like the word salad in terms of, oh, you know, we feel sympathy for the Palestinians, but also in the same breath, Israel has a right to defend itself. So she would have gave that line and nothing would have been done towards what's happening in Gaza. So fuck all y'all. Anyway, anti-Zionist Jews were present at almost every encampment. Some experienced the hand police forces sent in to crack down on the anti-advocates. Perhaps the most prominent case of this came with the arrest of U.S. presidential candidate Jill Stein. Columbia University President Minut Shafik, I think that's how you say her name, despite persecuting her own students and calling in the authorities to crack down upon them, risking their safety, was still forced to resign over the student uprising. The Zionist movement openly claimed responsibility and celebrated not only Shafik's resignation, but also that of Harvard's Claudia Gay and others. The mass unseating of university presidents was already unprecedented in the history of US academia. However, when Donald Trump took over the White House, he only accelerated the assault on free speech. The Trump administration has been following a strategy published by the Washington-based Heritage Foundation called Project Esther, which you've talked about in a previous show. This document was published by the influential right-wing think tank on October 7th, 2024, and has been followed almost precisely to the letter since Donald Trump's inauguration. Part of the strategy is framing anti-Israel sentiments as anti-Semitism and tying sympathy to Gaza to support of Hamas before weaponizing the Civil Rights Act, anti-terror legislation, and claiming national security threats as justification for draconian crackdown on First Amendment rights. Following this model, we saw the ICE detention of students/former students like Mahmoud Khalil, the freezing of funds to universities, and an attempt to place the curriculum in the hands of the US federal government. To the average person, raising a Palestinian flag is not anti-Semitism and chanting from the river to the sea is not support for Hamas, yet this is exactly the logic of the US government and Zionist movement in claiming mass anti-Semitic persecution. Instead of fighting the Trump administration push to topple academic freedom at Columbia University, it pledges to implement the US government's reforms in its desperate attempt to non-freeze federal funding. It didn't work, however, as another Columbia president, Katrina Armstrong, stepped down, while the White House ordered an investigation into anti-Semitism. To the great displeasure of Columbia faculty, the decided to back down once again and hand $200 million to the Trump administration, in addition to pledging $21 million in reparations for Jewish staff. Putting aside the fact that the university refused to stand up for or compensate Palestinian students or others with reparations for violent assaults and trauma that they endured during this period, Columbia University has still never paid reparations to Black Americans for its ties to slavery. The university, particularly in its early years while still called King's College, was deeply immersed in the slave trade. In fact, of its first 10 presidents, at least half were proven back in 2017 to have owned slaves.
Why?
Oh.
Why? What? What is that slide even? That's weird.
Okay, you know what? Let me...
Hold on.
I'm just going to read it.
What slide was that?
That was slide 11.
Okay, hold on.
Worst comes to worst, I'll just read it from my thing.
Yeah, I got it. Hold on. How about that?
Okay. Good. In addition to this, slavery was such a normal part of life at university that it seeped its way into the curriculum by the 1760s, as most students were there of the wealthy merchant families whose wealth came from the slave trade. There was even a constant need for college building operations funds requiring for maintenance, which were donated mainly by active participants in the slave trade. The stepson of U.S. founding father George Washington was even recorded as having bought a slave with him to the university. Back in 2016, Jordan Brewington uncovered documentation that proved 28 students at university had taken out a total of 44 advertisements for runaway slaves in local newspapers. Although many of the records linking the university to the slave trade were destroyed or lost in transition now, because I did a little digging, because where Columbia University currently is not the original place. So I think they moved about 2 or 3 times during the course of its founding. So a lot of this information regarding slaves and all that were either destroyed or lost. So in fact, a lot of it's students who have been doing research that has been able to uncover a lot of this information, what the information that we do have regarding Columbia and its ties to the slave trade. So just giving some context there. Although many of the records linking the university to the slave trade position, research from Columbia students managed to uncover many significant links that paint the picture that the academic institution was at least in part built and sustained with funds made as a result of the slave trade.
As like many also are, right?
Yes.
Here we can go back to this one. There you go.
Columbia University is an institution that historically, directly and indirectly, benefited from slavery. Research has revealed that administrators, trustees, students, and faculty were directly involved in enslaving people and profiting from the slave trade. These are all things that the university acknowledges, yet it has never paid any reparations to Black Americans. Instead, the academic institution sets up a class claims fund that will in fact pay reparations to its Jewish staff over claims that students opposing a genocide had allegedly engaged in anti-Semitic acts. In other words, reparations for hurting people's feelings, but no reparations for the descendants of enslaved Black Africans, the population on the backs of which the university has built itself. So I'm just going to say this to not all of you, but there's some of you in the past when I brought up reparations. Oh, it's not fair that Black people get reparations, and oh, like that happened a long time ago, and oh, what does that mean for me? You know, if I'm a person of color and all that kind of stuff. I totally get your feelings on that, but 2 things. Was it fair that Columbia Junior staff got reparations over their feelings, essentially? Number 1. Number 2, and more importantly, I do not want to hear from anybody how reparations aren't fair and not fair and all that other kind of bullshit. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of you think, and I've said this before, that you think it's tied to the government, that it's the government that is responsible. Not entirely. As you can see, and now granted, Colombia is rich. They have an endowment basically that can run New York City, essentially. They have the means to, do whatever they want with their money. So if they're able to buy up real estate in the Upper West Side in order to expand their campus, they have the money to provide reparations or really whatever they want to do in terms of funding for their students or maybe even the city. So the idea of reparations, and again, given its ties to slavery, and that's not just unique to Colombia, that's also basically any Ivy League you can think of. Harvard.
Or any corporation that profited.
Exactly. And we talked about 2 weeks ago how the Barbados slave trade, basically the work that essentially experimented on with slaves in Barbados essentially became the blueprint of how slavery was done in the original 13 colonies in some way, shape, or form. So, and again, like, I get a lot of you who might feel fair, unfair, but the idea that, to me, Jewish staff like, what's his name? Shai Davidai, or whatever the fuck his name.
Right.
Like, who we've seen clips of him being verbally abusive to students. He more than likely gets to benefit from this. And he, not to say like he needs any more, but he probably would get to benefit something like this over Black students Black people who might have been affected, in terms of how slavery has kind of impacted and in a lot of ways helped grow the university. But you could also make the argument, and I've made this argument, over maybe Palestinian students or basically any student who has been beaten, expelled for standing up for the rights of Palestinians. Like, how fair is that? So, and I get it, it's a touchy subject, but at the same time, for me, it's like, it's not a matter of fairness, it's a matter of moral clarity here, to me, only because if you say that if you're aware, given history, that what you did or what your ancestors did was wrong, then you have the means to be able to rectify that. And as we said, like when it comes to Black people, it's, oh, we'll look at a study, oh, we'll do this, anything to kind of prolong the idea of not giving you reparations. But Colombia, like within a year, was able to say, okay, you know what? In order for them to shut up, let's just give them money just so like they're able to be quiet. So
they aren't the only ones who's gotten reparations on top of that too. We've talked about slave owners got it right after this, they lost their slaves. There's
right.
I mean, countless versions of this from multiple different places, most of them white, So, but yeah. I mean, sure. You have a little more, right? I think
I do. So, as I said, it's probably next slide. So, come on. Actually, you know what? I'm going to skip this for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the hotspot. So I'll go back to that slide before. So as I said, Savvy and Nico talked about this article. So I do want to highlight what Nico is not going to say really anything new. He give the highlights of what Robert wrote, but I do want to hear his opinion on this as well. And then I'm going to bring in something that I don't think either he or Sabi mentioned when they did their segments on this. So why don't you go ahead and play that?
Hey, Columbia, you want to explain this shit, please? Now, as most of you know by now, a bunch of professors and employees from Columbia University started complaining because they didn't feel safe as people were protesting the genocide happening in Gaza. So they were awarded $221 million using the Equal Opportunity Employment Act. Now understand, no professor nor Columbia employee was harmed during his protest. No Columbia employee was threatened or had their jobs taken away from them for opposition to these protests, nor did their employees participate on either side of the conflict that's happening in Gaza right now. But somehow they were just given $221 million. Now on its face, that's extremely problematic because they just got $221 million because the university allowed students and other employees to exercise their First Amendment right. But in the grand scheme, it's even more problematic because Columbia University won't even pay reparations, nor have they considered paying reparations to the Black people that worked for them, despite the fact they were not just a part of slavery. Columbia would not exist without slavery. How do we know this, you might ask? Well, that's because Columbia University told us. In 2014, Columbia University started a project to examine the connections between the university and slavery. Oh, but not just in the context of Columbia on campus or the administration, but the impact Columbia had on its surrounding communities and the racism and discrimination that occurred even after slavery was abolished. And as it turns out, Columbia University basically wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for slavery and the money gained from slavery. They even have faculty, staff, presidents, members of the board of trustees who owned slaves. And their grand master plan for reconciliation is putting a bunch of names on buildings to commemorate the history. So Columbia acknowledged the part that they played in slavery, not only the benefits of slavery that they received, but the part they played in making sure that it was expanded. They acknowledged that they were wrong and they acknowledged that there needed to be reconciliation, but didn't decide to pay out reparations. And when they finally decide to pay out reparations, it's to a bunch of random Jewish employees who had their feelings hurt, and they use the Equal Employment Opportunity Act that was created under the Civil Rights Act because of how Black people were experiencing discrimination. Bruh, are y'all for real right now? And what are y'all gonna argue? Oh, well, those Black people or Black people today that might be working there, going to school there, or living in the community nearby, those people weren't directly affected by the policies back in the day. Well, the Jewish employees who bitched their way to $221 million aren't directly affected at all by the situation in Gaza, and yet they still got paid. And Columbia University and this project that they did actually acknowledges the fact that they did do damage to the community. They did discriminate within that community. They did still continue to treat Columbia as if it was an exclusively white school after slavery was banned, after discrimination was banned. There were direct impacts to Black people, whereas in the case of these Jewish employees, there was no direct impact from Columbia University itself. And they gave them money, and hell, even if you didn't want to give Black people in the area or at your school reparations, Columbia hasn't even tried to financially reconcile the situation by at least giving to the community, trying to open up programs to make it more easier for the Black people who otherwise wouldn't have had a chance in the past to get into the university. Nothing like that. Not even considered it. Once again, it seems like one specific group gets to benefit from laws and policies that were passed because of the way Black people were treated, while Black people were told once again, wait in line and shut the fuck up. I just find that really, really interesting.
Nico is on another level!
Shout out to Nico from Hotspot for that. I have a couple things I want to say. Like, he mentioned, you know, at minimum, give space to Black people who might want to go to the school, you know, make it easier for them to go to the school. I'm like, fuck that. Like, like that's the bare minimum that Columbia or any university can do at this point. Like, and you know, but again, it's still the idea of, and I remember when I had this conversation with Indy, we did, I think it was last year, we talked about the seemingly, you know, like connection that Jewish people and Black people had in this country, and are we really allies or not? And this is one of the things that I mentioned to him, which he agreed. You know, like, I don't see Jewish people necessarily going to bat for Black people to receive reparations, whereas during the Holocaust or post-Holocaust, you know, Jewish people got reparations then. But even now, like, when Black people have been calling for reparations since forever, crickets. Like, I don't see Jewish people in particular coming out for us to make that case. Well, this happened to us. Why not reconcile, you know, what happened to Black people in the past? And so, you know, so I think, and like I've said this now, well, given the last election, but I've since then, personally, I've kind of feel away now in terms of, you know, being in solidarity or working in advocacy with certain people, or like, or now I'm kind of a little bit more wary of that, because it's been that when the majority group wants their causes to be known or whatever, that I, as a person of color, have to stand for them. But when it comes to issues that directly impact me, it may or may not necessarily be as highly considered compared to their needs. So, but given all of that, I, you know, I know, again, so my kind of beef has been how, and I'm saying this, not all Jewish people, I would say.
Some, I assume.
As a, huh?
No, it's just the Trump quote. Continue. People will get it. They'll remember.
Yeah, but so I'm not saying this for all Jewish people, but I would definitely say as a group, do not seem to highlight the issue. Like you claim, Jewish people claim, like, oh, us and Black people gone through similar things, so we need to stick together. But yeah, I think more in recent history, like,
yeah, we were slaves too.
Exactly, but I don't see them necessarily going to bat for us in a way that, you know, Black people, especially like Black Americans, have gone to in this country have gone to bat for them, especially given in the 60s and due to the civil rights movement, you know. So that's kind of like one of my issues currently. But my bigger issue is with, and you probably know where I'm going with it. My bigger issue is with the FBA and the ADOS communities who scream all the time, cut the check, give us our reparations. And yet, and I checked last week, I think it was last week I checked before I went on before I went away over the weekend. As of now, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone in the chat, I checked Yvette Carnett-Brown, who's the leader of ADOS, and Tariq Nasheed's Twitter, who is the leader of the FBA movements. Check their Twitters. I think the most Yvette did was repost the article that I just read. As far as I know, didn't say shit, hasn't had a statement, hasn't said a word regarding this. Tariq, not a damn thing. Hence, this tweet that I posted to both of them, like, I think it was last week. So if you want to pull that up.
Working on it.
So I tweeted at them. So Columbia is able to pay out reparations to Jewish staff, but not to Black Americans. ADOS FBA, where you at? Why y'all making a big stink about this? Tariq and Yvette, care to comment besides a retweet? Haven't heard a damn thing. Haven't heard a damn thing from either.
Congratulations on being the world's biggest bitch.
Haven't heard a damn thing about this from Yvette. Haven't heard a damn thing about this from Tariq. Haven't heard a damn thing about this from any of their followers, quote unquote. So, and funny enough, I shared this with Dwayne, who we had on. I sent him a DM about this. I believe it was last week, and we talked about this with him last week. And he was like, "This is why the FBA and ADOS communities are not serious, because they use the aesthetic of oppression and reparations to gather whatever movement they're able to get. But in terms of actually fighting for this shit, they don't. So they talk about reparations all the time, but yet they're going to have an issue with immigrants right now coming in. But the very thing that they make the biggest stink about, you would think that a story like this should have them up in arms, but nope. Like, hadn't heard a damn thing from either one of them. And, you know, I know that Sabby kind of said, because I did see what she had to say about this, and she mentioned how, you know, Black people, like, there's definitely like, I don't want to say it's fake, but it's definitely like online beef, like that I see a lot of FBA ADOS people like make fun of Black immigrants or talk down about them, like me, in terms of, you know, like, oh, you're a tether and all this kind of bullshit, you know. But again, I'm not the problem. Like, something like this, in terms of the corporations and all these schools that have benefited off your backs,
Capitalism.
Exactly. Those are the people that you should be fighting. But instead, you're choosing to punch down across the way from people who look like you, who've gone through similar shit. But something like this that you should make a big stink about, there has been nothing about it. So in a lot of ways, I wanted to do this segment as on record, in terms of like saying, look, I, as a Black immigrant, talked about this, and my issue is why, and I'm making the big stink about it, like, why aren't you all, who have a bigger claim in terms of you calling yourself a Black American, that you're indigenous to this land and all this kind of stuff, that this is what is owed to you, but yet you don't talk about it, you don't make a big stink about it, you don't advocate for stuff like this. I am, or trying to, within the platform that I have. And so, you know, so it just goes like when I was in London hanging out with my dad, you know this because I say this to you all the time. Like, my dad's always like, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with us Black people? But I get his sentiment with stuff like this.
Yeah,
it's
but
like
he had a much cooler accent than you do. So, you know, it probably sounded much better.
Yes. But yeah. So so you brought me a story I think I'll talk about next week, just more of the how universities, like the big ones, are kind of aligning with
this.
than yes.
Yeah.
And not with this, but just in terms of the partnerships that they have with Israel and like those implications, between, which I think kind of add to the conversation. So I think I'll definitely bring that next week. Because I do think it kind of relates to this, and probably why Colombia was willing to do this, but not necessarily, and again, count Black Americans out of the equation. I think just any other oppressed group may not necessarily get the amount of attention that Zionists get, I would argue. So I think we'll definitely get into that next week. But I want to once again shout out to Robert Inlakesh for his reporting on this, especially since he's in the UK, so like, but he didn't have to do this at all. So the idea that he was able to bring a very, I wouldn't say American issue, but like something that has been kind of key in American society, especially given American university society, he didn't have to do this at all. But the fact that he was willing to, and doing the investigative work to do this, huge props to him for that. And as I said, go follow him on Twitter. I think his Twitter is Palestine 47, if I remember.
I think so. Article linked in the description, most likely, so you should be able to follow it. And
so because like we said, he's been heavily suppressed and censored on YouTube and social media in general. Just giving his reporting, he's been very active in terms of what's happening in Israel. We've reported on many of his stories and commented on them.
Robert, feel free to come on. Well, happy to ask you some questions, dog. Might have to do it on Rumble, but we'll handle business. So
but stories like these are why we're to monetize. So if you would like to support us on the show, if you have a smartphone, everyone does. Like, if I say if, like all you basically do with your smartphone, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you could type in the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you just totally forget either one of those options, if you're in the YouTube chat, type in !donate, all one word. The link will pop up. The Ko-fi link will pop up, and you can donate right directly there. You can also donate on Substack, PayPal, and Cash App if you want to support us that way. And as we always say, YouTube suppresses us. And the only way that we can get our network to grow is for you guys. So please do us a favor, like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Do all the things. Thank you. And let us know what you think. Do you think it's fair that Zionist staff got reparations before Black people? And certainly you can also make the argument for Palestinians as well, considering what's happening in Gaza. So let us know what you think. That would be interested to see.
Who are these people?
And thank you, Lord of Court, for the $5.
Yeah.
And guys, help us get to 3K. We hope to get there by the end of the year, if not sooner. So we're definitely on our track to do that. And thanks for watching.